Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, Monkey Wrench. I'm Kelly, the monkey with the wrench. Today, Peanut's over there watching what's going on. I don't know if you can see him. What are you doing over there, buddy? Anyway, today we are going to be working on this John Deere E130. And I want to start off by saying thanks everybody that comes to watch. This tripod keeps hitting my leg. Hang on. And today we're going to be working on this John Deere E130. First of all, I want to say thanks to everybody that stops by. Please hit that like button. It really helps me grow. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't. Join the family. And thanks for all the new subscribers. I can't keep up, which is great. So I want to discuss something that I get in the comments all the time, and that is that you should never do this. I hear this all the time. You should never turn a tractor up on its side. It's bad for it. Oil's gonna leak in places it shouldn't. Blah, 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 blah. Now let me tell you something. In this particular video, we're gonna be working on this John Deere E130, and you're gonna see real quick why it's easier not only to film, but to get this thing up. If you put it up on jack stands, you're climbing on the ground. I am 50 years old. I do not like climbing on the ground, up and down 22 times because you forgot a wrench or you have the wrong size or whatever the case may be. It is so much easier if you have the strength to turn a machine over. Now, when I was younger, I was a boxer, I was a bouncer. I'm a pretty strong guy. I get that. Not everyone has the ability to do that. However, by the time it takes somebody to set up jack stands and crawl down on their belly or their back to work on something that's 4 inches above their face, I don't do that. And if you've ever taken a motor apart, you know that oil, the whole 1 3/4 that's in this, is in the sump in a sealed engine case. And unless you turn it completely upside down, which in the sailboat community we call turtling, oil's not going to go anywhere it's not supposed to. If the carburetor is up, if the carburetor is down, oil can find its way through the carburetor, foul your carburetor, leak all over. They say that it can come out the exhaust. I don't have that issue with it coming out the exhaust. On this particular machine, the carburetor is not on one side or the other. It's actually in the front. That won't hurt anything. When you turn the engine, the motor sideways, there's plenty of space to hold the oil right down in the bottom. It will not find its way out the carburetor. The only way that you can damage this machine, and I usually use a chair, I know I should use something different, is if the chair breaks or moves on you and then this thing flips over onto its basically turtles up onto its top side. You could break your plastic hood, you could mess up your steering wheel, you could break off your seat, that kind of thing. So I'm not telling you to go out and do it like this. I'm telling you this is how I do it. This is how I do it so I can film. This is how I do it 10 times a week. And not once in 30 years have I had an issue that wasn't my fault. The chair that I used moved out of the way, the thing fell over. Didn't cause any engine problems, but it can cause, like I said, a break in the hood, messed up steering wheel, busted off seat. So be careful if you do it this way. I do not recommend that you do it this way, but this is how I do it. And it doesn't hurt anything mechanically. So, having said all that little rant in the beginning, keep those comments coming. I love them because every time you leave me a comment, it shows YouTube that you are interacting with my video, and they don't care whether it's a positive comment or a negative comment, and neither do I. It doesn't hurt my feelings at all. So, yesterday's video was taking, or last week for you, was taking the deck off of this beastie right here because we needed to get it out of the way anyway. While I had it off, I put on the new deck belt. Show you how that worked. Showed you how easy it was to take it on, put it off, and how to take off the deck as well. The reason I did that is because on this John Deere, this wonderful piece of malfeasance, I don't know what the right word is for it. People love these John Deeres. I hate them. I absolutely hate them. They do not last longer than anything else, like most people say. The older ones did, okay? Back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, they were. But today, John Deere is just an overpriced piece of plastic crap. Not to the customer. It's just a personal opinion. We all have them. But in this wonderful machine, we have a problem. The owner of this machine contacted me and said all of a sudden it would not run forward or back. Starts up just fine, just wouldn't drive. So again, like in last week's video, I showed you on the back of here is your pump release. You pull that out so you can push it in to engage the pump. And I was wondering if that had vibrated its way out. It had not. I checked all over this thing only to find the impossible. That this thick belt found its way out from between the keepers, which I can barely fit my fingernail in, and it found its way out of the keepers on, obviously on all three, but on both sides, and the belt came off. Now the belt doesn't look too horrible. It's got some worn spots there. It's got a few issues. It's older, it's stretched. It still should have never been able to work its way out between that solid steel keeper and that solid steel pulley. But it did. And today, after so many years of working on machines, it doesn't surprise me anymore. So that was his problem. And in order to change this belt, which is probably why you tuned into this video, sorry about the rant, it's a pain in the butt. The belt that goes underneath of the machine, as you can see, goes around the steering column. They couldn't spend an extra $5 to put in an extra pulley to guide it around the steering column. So you actually have to take that all apart, move the steering wheel, just so you can get the belt changed. So let's start out. Here we go. First, in the front, we have to take off the drive pulley. Then we have to loosen both of these pulleys. In the back here, next to the fan, if I can get my fingers in right here, this takes a 5/8 inch wrench. This is a post that screws into your transmission. You have to take that off, which I usually loosen it from up there, and then I just see if I can find it for you. There it is. Once I loosen it from up front, because there isn't enough room back here for a wrench, then I reach up in here and unscrew it, take it off. That's the only way to get your belt off of the rear pulley, was to get this post out of the way. Then we have to take the steering mechanism off and push the steering wheel up to clear the belt. So let's get started. Now thankfully this is a newer machine and it's been very well kept, so I don't think we're going to have any issues with any rusted parts or anything. We're going to take this off first. And in all fairness, I loosened this before the video started. We're going to take off this drive pulley. You might want to put some never sees in there just to make sure that it doesn't stick to it. We've already got a little grease on there. Now the front of our belt is clear. So now we'll see the next part, which is going to be these pulleys here. Now when you're doing this, there are two kinds of pulleys on here, so it's easy to remember. On these V belts, one side is a V, obviously the other side is flat. The pulleys are the same way. One is flat and one is V. So you always know the flat side goes around one pulley and the V side goes in the other. The V goes into the V to bite onto it. So you shouldn't have any issues remembering how to feed this belt. Now I just loosen these pulleys so that I can get the belt out. Just like that. And the same thing here. Just like that. Now, off camera, I'm going to remove that stud in the back And now I'm going to show you how to get the steering out. Keep you in frame. There we go. Up and down, off the ground, up and down, off the ground. I'm too old to be doing it all the way down to my stomach and back. Take that nut off right there. And that happens to be a 3/4 inch nut. So you take off the nut. Now, you can mark your steering here against this gear. This gear doesn't matter where it goes. The gear has nothing to do with any alignment. But what you want to do when we put this back together is remember that you want to be about the center. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, somewhere around the 11th tooth. And when we put that gear back on, you're going to have to make sure that the steering wheel up there is pointing the way it's supposed to. It's not important mechanically. It's an aesthetic thing. It's the way it looks, and your customers will care. Now, the only reason that I pre-loosened this front drive pulley is because sometimes it's on too strong for my impact driver, and other times it's rusted onto the shaft, and I didn't want you guys to have to watch that if that was the case. I got lucky, came right off. Now we're going to take this gear right here off. This is just a gear with teeth on it. There's nothing special about it. Just pry it off. It's off. Inside of the gear, there is no teeth. There is nothing to worry about. This is a spline situation, and these are splines. So when it goes back in, it doesn't matter where it goes on this spline shaft. That doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is making sure that your wheels are straight and that your steering wheel up there aesthetically is straight when you do it. Because it's on the side, the wheels are always going to be straight. Now we have to get a hammer and push this steering up. Let me get a hammer. Alright, let's see if we can persuade this. Make sure that if it is on its side that the steering wheel isn't touching anything. Because if the steering wheel is touching something, then you're going to be trying to beat it against the chair. Easy peasy. Let me take you off the stand. And what I mean about aesthetics is you want to know when you put it back on that the John Deere symbol or anything else is facing down. And clearly the last person to do this didn't do it because it wasn't facing the right way. So when you put it back in, you're going to want to turn it and make sure it's going the right way. Now, there is nothing that's going to fall out of here. There's nothing that's going to fall out of the way. So just pull the steering. I pulled it a little too far to show you guys. So I'm going to have to find that hole again to put it back through. But once you get that out of the way, see if we can get you out of there a little bit. The last thing to do is going to be for me to pull that stud that I showed you next to the fan. Once I do that, the belt is free and I'll bring you right back, because that's going to take a while. Now, I know my ugly behind is going to be in the way, but you cannot see up there. You cannot stick your head far enough in one direction to even see that. I can barely see it with my left eye. So what I like to do is take the wrench and go in from the front side, take my hand and go in and find that post, and I take the top of my two fingers, put it on the nut that's on that post, put the bottom against it, and then use that as a guide to be able to find that actual nut part so that I can unscrew it. And remember, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Once you get it far enough out, then you can just use your right hand and go up. I'm unscrewing it now. Oh, we caught a harder spot. And there it is. And that's what that looks like. The nut is built in. It's not a separate nut. There's no adjustments on there at all. It just screws into the transmission. Once you get that out of the way, then you can feed the belt over the fan, no problem. Make sure you don't pull on that plastic fan and break it. Now this belt actually looks like it's in pretty good shape. It's worn, but it's not skinny enough that it should have been able to come out of those keepers on the front. But you know what? It did. The universe is a crazy place, and I have stopped worrying about why. Now you probably wonder why most channels tell you to take the new belt, put it next to the old belt, and see how it is. The old belt here is approximately the same size as the new belt. The new belt can even be a touch smaller. The reason is I have gone to the parts house and I have purchased belts that were supposed to be for the machine I was working on. I love this shade. Oh, I really love this shade top that I put up. It makes life so much easier. The breeze is blowing. I've gone to the store and given them the numbers of the machine and said I need the belt, and brought that belt back to the shop and found out that it was way off. There are people in the world that will buy the belts and then sometimes mistakenly they'll take the cardboard cover off of it, and then they'll put the wrong one on, or they'll put the wrong belt back in, whatever, and then return it, and they don't check it at the store, and so what you end up with is the wrong belt. So before you feed it all the way back onto your machine and find out at the last minute it's the wrong belt, just double check it while you're there. So now I'm just going to reverse the process. I'm going to let this run while I do it. So if you want to fast forward through the video, that's okay. But it is important sometimes to show the completion. Now I'm just going to take this. You can see what it is. I'm just going to put it back in its little hole. Don't worry, I'm only going to hand tighten it. You're not going to have to watch me sit here for 10 minutes and put it all back on. Now I'm going to take the belt and I'm going to feed it up through here. It goes on top of everything, so you don't have to worry. And then I just wrap it around there for just a second. Now I've got to feed it back through my pulleys. The V side is up, so I'm going to put it back in that pulley. I'm going to put it back in this pulley. We're going to reseat those pulleys. That's it. Was that right? Yeah. Flat side, V side, flat side, V side. You're supposed to let me know if I'm doing something wrong. We're going to tighten these back up. Oh, that's not the right one. That's not it. This, by the way, I'm using a 15 mil. As long as they still move freely, you're good. Make sure it's seated. Still moving freely, good to go. This moves when you take the brake off. This whole thing will move up, it'll pivot up, and that's what puts pressure on this belt and tightens it up. So in the meantime, let's move the camera so I can show you what I have to do now. You see that I've already pushed the steering column back through the top there. I left it up far enough to get the belt past it. Now all I have to do is feed it into that hole. And that can be tricky sometimes and sometimes not. Now on this side of the machine, this is what I was talking about. When I feed the steering wheel through, you can't really see it, I'll show you after, but you want to make sure that the steering wheel is tilted where the two at the top are even, the one at the bottom comes down on this model, and the John Deere, the actual Deere, is facing you like you should be able to see it. And we're just going to feed it back in that hole. Bear with me. We're going to feed it back into that hole. Just tapped it with my hand. because it's a little bit tight, as it's supposed to. I sprayed a little lube on there. This came back through. This is splined, remember, so it's just fine. The gear has nothing but splines, and there's multiple splines. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So as long as your wheels are straight, and when mine's up on the side, it's gonna be straight, all I have to do is feed this gear back on. Before I do, the top of the gear you can see has worn spots where it matches up with here, and the bottom does not. So in our case, I'm gonna flip this thing over and put non-worn spots, if it'll go on there. It should. Where's my persuader? Make sure that you're lined up with a gear. When you try to put this on, it has to line up with the teeth on here as well as the splines on there. Now, because I'm tapping on it, it's actually pushing that steering wheel back up. And this is where the fun part is trying to get this thing to stay where you need it to stay. Great John Deere crap. Kick the gear off. So let's do this again. It's gonna keep moving that. And most guys will say, cut, I'll bring you back when it's done. I want you to see how much of a pain in the ass this John Deere really is. And what I have to do to get it on. Now what I actually did was I grabbed this with my fingers and I used my knuckles as leverage to pull it backwards to give me enough clearance to be able to fit that gear in there, because the steering column's not going to move. It's being held in 4 different points from the top to the bottom, so that's not going to move. If that has wiggle room, you have problems. That's another video. So in this case, I used my fingers to move this part here. Okay, that's loose too. I'm going to have to see if that needs to be tightened at all. And then I was able to tap the gear past and make everything mesh. And now I can put my nut back on. Be careful tapping on that thing too. You could actually mess up the threads. I only hit it a couple of times, but it should be fine. If not, I would have to get out my tap and die set. Oops, go the right way, dumbass. Now we're in, we're good. This is back in where it's supposed to be. This is on correctly, it's not touching anything. This is on the other side of the steering column as well. Nothing's touching anything it's not supposed to. So the pièce de résistance, or as the French would say, the pièce de résistance. The final step, remember I have to tighten that keeper in the back below the fan, which I'm not gonna make you guys watch, but I want you to see the rest of this. You probably couldn't see me tapping that, so I'm gonna have to check that. I'm not doing it again. I hope you could see me put that gear back on. And the last thing to do, there is a spline on the inside of this, and there is never sees in here. So find the spline so you can start in the right spot. I usually put the pulley through the belt first until I find the spline. Leave it out far enough that I can get the belt on it. And then you have to squeeze the belt together while you're pushing the pulley into place so that it stays inside of all 3 keepers. And once you've done that, you can take your nice long bolt, put that back on there. No, I do not put never sees on there. And I don't put Loctite on there, ever. Never put Loctite on this bolt. I know that people say you should. It can reverse out. If you are doing regular maintenance once a season or so on your machine and you're checking it, it's never going to come out. But I can tell you, working on 10 to 20 machines a week, when people put never sees on here, these bolts get stuck, okay? And then most people don't use an impact, they use a ratchet. They put too much torque on it all at once and they shear that bolt. And then they can't get it out of the stupid machine, the motor. Then they screw up the crankshaft. They have broken bolts. I just had a call last week. A guy broke off the bolt in this thing and he wanted to know if it could be fixed. The problem wasn't that it broke off out here at the tip. It broke off inside the crankshaft, which means you have to drill it out, you have to tap it, and it gets messed up. And I've done that before, and as soon as I put it back together, it sheared right off again. So don't put Loctite on these things. Do maintenance on your machine. Check it every once in a while. Make sure it's not coming loose. Just like this is coming loose, I just want to make sure that that's supposed to be where it's supposed to be. I believe it is. I believe it's for movement. Yeah, so it is. So I'm going to leave that. But in the meantime, now if I let off on the brake, you'll be able to see that belt, that loose belt, will tighten up. Tighten up. So I'm going to release the brake. You see how this pivoted and it put tension on the belt. That's exactly what it's supposed to do. When you hit the brake, all you do is pivot this up and take tension off of here so that it stops driving. That's it. So I'm gonna go ahead and tighten. Where's my finger? I'm gonna tighten that last post, and I'm gonna tip this thing back up, and I'm gonna go ahead and put the deck back on it and call the customer and tell him he's good to go. He also wants new blades, so we got new blades for the deck. I've done that on 100 videos on this channel. So I hope, besides my ranting, that this video helped some of you guys to understand that there are a lot of things out there. You will hear from people and they'll say, don't do this or don't do that, and you should do it this way and you should do it that. You should do it whatever way works best for you, even if it doesn't work best for 90% of the other people. In my opinion, flipping a machine up on the side was scary the first couple of times I did it. Now I do it several times a week. I have customers that have been my customers for years, so clearly I'm not losing business by screwing up something and people not telling me about it. Do things the way that make you feel the most comfortable. Clearly, if you are a skinnier person, 160 pounds, 180 pounds, I wish I was you, because damn, I'm fat. You may not have the body strength to be able to lift that machine up on its side. And remember, once it gets to a pivot point, all of the weight wants to go the opposite direction. So you not only have to have the strength to lift it up, but you have to have the strength to lower it down slowly without breaking anything. So this may not be the way for you. When I get my new shop, which hopefully I will, links in the description if you want to help donate to that. I'm trying to raise a little money. I'm going to have an overhead setup with a winch on it, so I can just put cable on the front of the tractor and lift that sucker straight up like that, so that I can work on it from here and lower it back down. But for right now, I don't have that opportunity. So please don't try this if you don't have the strength for it. Let it be known, I'm having a complete brain fart, that you can break this thing if you allow it to roll completely over. You break your steering wheel, all kinds of stuff. So get a friend to help you, or use your jack stands if that's the way you want to do it. But I guarantee you, flipping it over is not going to hurt anything as far as engine wise and oil and gas and stuff going places it shouldn't go. Now in this case too, the gas, I already checked, the gas is not leaking. So if you do have to flip one of these things up, you may want to drain the gas first, which I normally do if it's going to leak. because gas will find its way out of the cap. Sometimes you can use like plastic and then put the cap on to keep it in, but this one didn't leak, and most of the time I drain the fuel. So keep that in mind. After you set this thing back up where it's supposed to be, leave it set for at least a half an hour. Let all the oil drain back where it's supposed to be, just so you don't have any issues with dry start. Let me know in the comments what you think. I'm always open to new ways of doing things. So if there's a better way that I can film and show you guys everything, not have to crawl on my belly 42 times an hour, and not have an overhead winch to work with, well, you let me know. And otherwise, thanks for stopping by. Hit the subscribe button. It's somewhere between my chin and my balls, and I'll see you on the next one. Okay, and just to show you that I do have a little editing skills now that I have a new computer, let's just see if this sucker is gonna run. What do you think? The teddy bears have their picnic. Okay, so you can see that works just fine. Now that puff of smoke you saw when it first started up was because I had it tilted up on its side, just like a push mower. You always get a puff of smoke in the beginning because a little bit of oil does go somewhere, but it goes right away. It doesn't hurt a daggone thing, and this thing runs and drives. Hopefully you saw me playing around in the yard for just a second. And what I meant by aesthetically was that when the wheels are straight, the steering wheel should also be straight. You should be able to see the Deere steering wheel straight, wheels are straight. So I'll leave you to it.